Guys, the word tweet has entered the hollowed text of the Oxford Dictionary, which raises the question, is this the fall of Western civilization? In case you were wondering, no, this is not the fall of Western civilization. This is just the English language being the English language. Language isn't something we think about, especially when it's doing its job. For example, you don't really parse my words as strings of nouns, adjectives, and verbs. Language is for communicating. And because it's so good at what it does, it's alive. Nouns have a tendency to give birth to verbs over time, and individual words can have their own origin stories. Since this is the internet, let's start with something cute. Lemurs! The word lemur actually comes from the Latin lemurus, side note, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, which refer to the specters of the restless dead. Cute and spooky. And speaking of spooky, we've been going boo since the early 19th century. It's probably Scottish in origin, but if you say boo to a Turkish or Spanish speaker, they will also recognize it as an attempt to scare them. It should also be noted that booing at sporting events didn't originate until later. And as much as Europeans might boo Americans for calling their beloved football soccer, the term soccer actually originated in England. The term football had been kicking about for a good long time at that point. In fact, a game called football was banned by a Scottish statute back in the 1400s. During the 1800s, a version of the game called association football emerged, which became a sock or a soccer in usage before becoming soccer in the 1860s. As the popularity of soccer spread, it eventually became known as football again throughout England. American football, incidentally, is known as stop-start rugby with padding. Rugby, of course, is played without pads or helmets, which just, ow. Brain injuries are not my favorite. And speaking of brains, human anatomy buffs will recognize the hippocampus as the part of the brain that affects things such as memory, while mythology geeks will immediately think of the hippocampus as Neptune's fishy, dolphin-y seahorse thing. Yeah, it turns out the brain thing came from the horse-fish thing. Apparently in 1706, they thought that part of your cerebral cortex looked a bit like a fish. And because English is alive, here's a footnote on words like tweet, which have gained a new meaning from colloquial use. These meanings don't always stick once they lose thetheir cultural context. For example, rutabagas are root vegetables, but apparently they were also slang for dollars in the 1940s, and in the 1920s, a fish could also be a college freshman or a first-time prison inmate. Same thing, right? But the malleability of a word meaning also lends to its survival. For example, the word subscribe originated in the 15th century with the meaning sign your name below. But today, when I ask you to subscribe to our channel, you don't have to sign anything. Just click the button.